Ato Boldon, sprint coach of Jamaica's youth sensation, Briana Williams.
And here comes Terry, championship record holder, is going to have to push because Williams is holding her off. Williams has taken it in 11.15. It's a surprise victory. Terry, the championship record holder, held off, and Jamaica have gold.
He's a track analyst with NBC Sports.
They have now gone into the realm of video game times, 9.69 for Usain Bolt, and he made it look easy.
In the 90s, NCAA champion, Olympic medalist, world champion, Boldon won 16 medals for Trinidad and Tobago.
And Boldon is going clear of the field. Boldon is going to win by a big margin. Fredericks is in second place.
Boldon was part of an elite group of sprinters, along with training partners John Drummond and Maurice Green, who brought legions of fans to track and field in the 90s. Sports Chat caught up with Ato Boldon to talk COVID-19, Briana, the state of Trinidad athletics, those infamous comments he made about Bolt, and of course, his legacy in track and field. Let's chat with Ato Boldon. Hi Ato, welcome to Sports Chat.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right, so COVID-19, 2020, interesting year for track and field. Do you think we're going to actually get this season off the ground?
I know I'm in the minority. I see other meets around the world. I think there's one that's going to happen in June in Oslo, I read today. But I don't think the track and field in the way that fans like you and I who are used to track and field in a conventional sense, I don't think that's going to happen at all.
All right, but you know, one interesting thing now is that I'm wondering how athletes are coping.
I don't know that my experience is going to be what everybody else's is because we know Briana is special.
Yes.
And she's 18 and she just signed her contract. So life has changed for her. So I don't know if she's happy because, you know, her life has changed or if she's coping well and that's why she seems happy. But I can tell you that the mental aspect of dealing with this delay, I think is going to be of a lot more concern to a lot more of these coaches because,
yes,
you know, I say Olympic athletes only have two speeds, off and go for broke, all out. And for all of them, they've been dealing with this, yes, I'm going for this thing and Olympic trials. And then the rug just got pulled out from under all of them. And now I see a lot of them, and, you know, I follow most of them on social media too. And they're just like drifting like, okay, so what do I do now? Because I don't, this gear where doing
everything but track and field, cooking.
This thing called neutral, I don't do neutral. I either do off completely, not doing anything, or I'm working towards something. So Briana is, you know, we're still training, but what kind of training are we doing? We're doing like a hybrid of fall training and where she would be in like March.
And why are you doing that? I guess you're just maintaining her fitness level going into next year or hoping for something to happen for this year. Why are you training?
I have to kind of hedge my bets as a coach and say, look, maybe we start running in August or September. Her agent certainly seems to think that. I'm not so sure. Remember that Briana didn't have a full 2019 of being fit for that like entire year. So I am thinking now, okay, so Briana's last time being completely fit, having a full season is what, 2018 when she won World Juniors, and that was over in July.
Right.
We get through this, it means that she has to be ready for Worlds, Olympics in 2021,
yes,
Worlds in 2022, Worlds in 2023, Olympics in 2024. Briana will have gone too many years without having been fully razor sharp fit. And that's my bigger concern. And it's not something that a lot of other coaches have to deal with because most of their athletes had a pretty full 2019 leading to a late world championship.
As you mentioned 2019, how was that year for you? It was a pretty tough year.
To say the least, it started spectacularly. Briana, her double Austin Sealy Award, the only Jamaican female to date, and the only other Jamaican is Usain Bolt, so that there was that. And then, you know, we get ready for the World Championship trials. It goes almost exactly the plan, almost exactly the number I thought she would run.
And they know they have to deliver a top three spot against Briana Williams, who is really at the best of her game.
Yes, Ato Boldon, as they say, has been there and done that.
And then we find out that she has this thing in her system was not supposed to be there. And I go through the next month or two of reading more false information about myself written online than I've ever seen. Seeing people kind of go after her, including some people who, quite frankly, I didn't think I would ever see that from. But you know what? She survived, and I think she came out on the other side of it.
You were part of a camp that really was, I would say, having their heyday in the 90s, going into 2000. What for you was the most important moment of that entire era?
I don't know that it was something that happened in front of me. And when I say that, I mean, I was not aware when I was going through my own career that there were so many people behind me, or when I say behind me, back at home in Trinidad and Tobago, looking, and in the Caribbean, looking and saying, that's what I want to do, that's who I want to emulate, and that's who I want to be. So for me, I was worried about the next medal or beating Maurice or taking on Michael Johnson and Frankie Fredericks. I was never really thinking about legacy or who was paying attention or whatever. Now, by the time I get ready to retire in 2004, so between 2001 and 2004, we have Mark Burns show up and Darryl Brown, and a little later we have Richard Thompson, all of whom will tell you that they saw me and said, that is what I want to do.
You've had some huge names in track and field that haven't necessarily, I don't know that they've necessarily done as well as, say, an Ato Boldon when you look at the influence to their actual country.
Huge name doesn't do anything if you are not, put this way, and this is not a knock against Frankie, but for some reason, Namibia has not been able to find the next Frankie Fredericks.
That is true, yes.
Right?
Yes.
But after me, somehow those young Trini men said, okay, me. So we've had now we're in trouble now, kind of like Jamaica is on the men's side. But there was something about my appeal, my reach back into the community that enabled Trinidad to go and find some other sprinters. And that's not nothing.
Think about what kind of charisma you brought to track and field, what the sport was like then in the 90s. And I want to get back to those glasses you used to wear, those shades. Do you still have them?
No.
Okay, why were you wearing them?
You know what's funny about those glasses? I can't remember how much they paid me to wear the glasses. I think they gave me like $75,000, literally to wear them for a night. So that should take care of most of your answer, right?
Okay.
If somebody tells you, and this was 2000. So they come to me, Oakley comes to me and they say, we want you to wear these glasses. And I look at them and I go, you gotta be kidding me. And whatever the figure was, they said, we're gonna pay you this to wear the glasses. And I went, oh, okay, sure. I put them on, and the thing is, I knew it would be a little polarizing in terms of how they would be received.
Yes.
I actually got one for our leadoff leg on Connor Alexander. And he puts them on first, and you can just see like people taking pictures. And then I put on mine, and then I can feel the flash bulbs on me. So we didn't make it to the final. We were close, and I didn't think anything of it. The next morning, almost every single publication in the world, from the Sydney Morning Herald, the New York Times, the LA Times, everything, that picture had made. And I thought to myself, see, this is how athletes get confused. I thought I was getting over on Oakley by taking this money. They got way more than they paid. 20 years later, you're still asking about it. If you go on Twitter, you see it every single week. So Oakley got the benefit.
I'm thinking about Usain Bolt and when he held up those Pumas, right? That just flew off the shelf for Puma. And like Johan Blake, who wore those expensive Richard Mille watches.
Right, the watch, yeah.
And I think about the Olympics and just what a big commercial asset it is. And the fact that athletes are not paid for this. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think there are the last two things that have to be conquered in terms of this ridiculous amateur rules thing are the NCAA, the NCAA system in the United States, where the performers make billions.
Yes.
Excuse me, the event makes billions, the coaches make millions, the administrators make millions, and the actual performers don't get a red cent.
Zero.
Now, and I know some people say, oh, but they get scholarships. Listen, that is not a debate you're ever going to win with me. I was a star athlete at UCLA. I know how much we starved. And I know all my fellow star athletes on campus, they're all starving because the system is set up to keep the athletes absolutely destitute while everybody else is making money. The other thing that's left is the Olympics, because you still have the performers coming, running for these medals, and everybody else is getting paid. So it's like, you know what? It's time to give up this facade. The Olympics should have prize money. And you mentioned Usain Bolt. Yes, there are people at the top, Simone Biles, Usain Bolt, Michael Phelps, et cetera, that are going to make their money. My concern is not so much for the top. It's for
everyone else,
the middle and the bottom, because you should not have a case where people are having to work 3 and 4 jobs just so that they can live their Olympic dreams, to go and make a bunch of money for television stations and for the IOC. That can never be fair.
Let's just for a second look at what's happening in Trinidad and Tobago. You mentioned a proliferation of athletes that came after Ato Boldon. Certainly, I think Richard Thompson is one that would stand out in the Jamaicans' mind, because who would have thought it behind, well, it's not quite behind Usain Bolt, is it? You know, there's a bit of social distancing space there. But silver in OA, it was a big deal. How do you feel now when you look at the state of Trinidad's track and field? And I think we're all agreed that it's not in a great state.
I don't think it's ever been worse.
Yeah.
And they don't like to hear me say that, but there are a lot of people that don't like to hear me say the truth. Particularly back in Trinidad and Tobago. The sport has been run into the ground by people who, they're very well-meaning, and I don't think I have a personal problem with any of them, but they have not, it's a results-based business.
Yes.
And I think the more that I've had to interact with Jamaica, and Jamaica is by no means perfect, but the more I interact with Jamaica, the more I feel like what goes on in here is more the Jamaican half of my DNA than the Trinidadian half. Because I mean, now you look at where Jamaica is in terms of its track and field. And I remember 10 years ago when you guys were sweeping Olympic Games, right? For example, in 2008, and you guys were not content to create national history or international history. You know what Jamaica was concerned about? Where can we get some more medals? What about those field events? What about the throws? Look at the composition of the Jamaican team now, right? You have the long jump world champion from Doha. Your field events are stronger than they have ever been. Why? Because it took somebody in power to have the foresight to develop that. Back in Trinidad and Tobago, this is an actual quote. The head of our federation said, we're not bothering to look for distance runners because Trinidad and Tobago is a country of sprinters. Now, when you have somebody who is that myopic at the top, of course you're not going to have any development.
Absolutely not.
So somebody like me who has gone through, you know, my athletes have dominated Carifta for the last 3 or 4 years. And I looked at the Carifta results and I said, okay, so yes, everybody knows Jamaica rules Carifta and it's not even close. And we used to be, as a country, second. And they said, well, you know, we can never catch Jamaica. And then we slipped to third behind the Bahamas. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, what about this? You used to say Jamaica has more people. Bahamas has 1/5 of our population. Now what? Oh, well, you know, and then some years Barbados would beat us. And some years we're coming back 5th. The difference between Jamaica track and field and Trinidad and Tobago track and field is that the Jamaican public is so dialed into what is right and what is wrong and what they know and what they don't know. No official can come back and stand up in the airport in Jamaica and say, oh, yeah, we had a great Carifta, if you didn't. Because the fans would say, no, we didn't.
Did not. No, you did
in
not.
Trinidad,
accountable.
In Trinidad, there's no accountability. And the press doesn't really know track and field. There's 1 or 2 people who are very strong. So they come back home after Carifta, we get 4th, and they go, oh, yeah, we had a great Carifta. The kids did very well. And I'm there like, what are you talking about? We did terribly. And the stenographers in the airport go, yeah, and the next day you read in the papers, Carifta team does well at Carifta. It's like, so now here we are. If you ask me if I think Trinidad and Tobago is going to win a single medal in Tokyo, the answer is no. I don't want that, but this is what I do for a living.
What do you think needs to be done to get Trinidad track and field where it ought to be?
Break the system and completely remake it. The short version of that explanation is we are still very reliant on our clubs. That worked very well in the 40s and 50s and 60s and maybe even the 70s. You'll notice that Jamaica doesn't have any clubs at that level because they don't need to. The high school system is so strong. If I had my druthers, I would say, let's stop this consistent dependence on the clubs, because the clubs, quite frankly, are not producing anywhere close to the level that they were back in the day. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of talent in high school, but that system is so poor, as you discovered, that you're not getting anything out of it because, the Trinidad and Tobago equivalent of champs is held on a weekday. All the parents are at school. Nobody pays attention. Especially these kids today. You want to be involved in something that's lit. You know what's not lit? High school track and field in Trinidad and Tobago. So you have to break that old mold of trying to do stuff the way you did it 50 years ago and come up with something. Inject some private sector money, not the government, not the Ministry of Education. That's part of the problem. Get some private sector money. And there is private sector money, a lot of it in Trinidad and Tobago. Get that, incentivize it, make it cool, and watch the results.
You wear so many hats, right? So I think as a broadcaster, you've been what I would consider to be excellent. I've enjoyed listening to you over the years.
Thank you.
I've written as much in the Gleaner before. There was one moment I wasn't so proud of, and I'd written about it in a magazine as well. I believe that was at the 2008 Olympics when Usain Bolt ran. Mm-hmm. And if I remember well, I think you said, folks, that's not the way a champion responds, because he beat his chest. And I thought, no, Ato, you don't understand. Culturally, Jamaica, that's how we celebrate. Like if champs, they're sending bullets in the stands. It's a Jamaican celebration that I think came out in Bolt. Looking at who Bolt is now and looking at that comment then, is there anything you would say differently? Because some Jamaicans took offense.
Some Jamaicans have never forgiven me for that. Listen, if you're on television 12, 13 years, at some point you're going to say something that's going to offend or irritate somebody.
Yeah. Let
me give you a little bit of context with that, because the truth is most people heard about the comment but never saw how it actually happened. And of course, I look back at this now and I laugh. It's 2008. It's my first Olympic Games. I saw the finish of the event, and it didn't really faze me one way or another. I was just awestruck, and everybody's heard my praise of what Usain did.
Yes.
The next day, I think they put me on the Today Show, and Bob Costas is there.
Yes.
And he actually is the one who I think had an issue with it. And in a split second, I had to decide whether I was going to not agree with him or agree. And I went down the road of agreeing with him too much. Mm-hmm. So the comment came across as, he said that, and me, and of course, Trini, Islander, look, he has sold us all out in order to agree with Mr. Bob Costas. And the truth is that I look back and I look back at that event and my comment, and I think to myself, it's okay to say you were wrong about that, because I was wrong. The thing is, you have to understand, nobody had ever seen that before in the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
It had never been seen. So to me, there was a part of me that was like, whoa, wait a minute, can you do that? Can you do that? And it was more that, but the way it got spun was, here is somebody who is a Trini, who is seeing a Jamaican one, and remember, he never won gold, and he's hating. And it's like, there's no way, if you have listened to me broadcast Usain Bolt's career, that you could ever think that there's one iota of hate that I have for what that young man has done.
You have a camp now that I've said it to you before many times that I think could expand and could include other athletes. Do you have any plans to expand the club? Because I see a lot of articles here, right? Jamaicans are saying, I think Ato Boldon should take over this athlete and he should take this youth athlete. And, do you have any plans to expand?
I get excited about furthering the dreams of young people. I am on the lookout for the next Briana, the next Kavona, the next Ashanti Moore, but I don't know if it's an active pursuit. I think if one of them, I think if somebody like an Ashanti Moore showed up and said, hey, I would like to partner with Briana.
Ashanti, if you're listening.
And train under you. And this is a conversation I've had with Briana. I said, Briana, and I thought Briana would say, I don't know about that. And I went to Briana and I said, suppose Ashanti Moore wants to come. And Briana was like, that'd be great. And her mother said, that'd be great because Briana needs somebody to push her in practice anyway. So it really does depend on the Queen Bee now, Miss Williams.
It would benefit both of them or any athletes, I think, to have others. We've seen it before many times. Jamaicans are training everywhere, but do you think there'll be any reservations about a number of our youth athletes being with your camp?
I think if 3 or 4 world-class young Jamaicans showed up, I think that could become a problem. I think there are a lot of Jamaicans, whether or not they would say it or not, that might say, we don't know if we want the future of our sport in Trinidad.
I'm going to ask you this, Ato. Is that a fear that you have as a coach?
Not at all. Because if to get the results that I have achieved in my very short coaching career, you cannot be afraid, right? You have to trust what you know, figure out what you don't know, and seek wise counsel. And that's been the secret to my coaching. I don't look at somebody like a Frano or a Glenn Mills and go, oh yeah, I'm their equal. I'm not. But I've gotten results because I do have my own sort of toolbox that I can go to. I'm a communicator. You ever see Briana in a big race? Briana has never had a bad race in a big race. You know why? Because I can communicate and Briana trusts me. When Briana goes into a big race, she's already convinced. And I know that I can do that with any world-class coach. So I wouldn't be worried about taking on anybody else as long as they were willing to come and to buy into my system. It's not, I'm not working magic over here.
There's a Glenn Mills who typically is good male athletes. Stephen Francis is so accomplished. He's had luck on the male and the female side, but I think people say that he's great with the female talent. Do you ever think about coaching like a male talent? How do you feel about that?
I have not had males the caliber of a Khalifa St. Fort or a Briana Williams, but I hear you say that, and if you ask me if I have a preference, and I have to be honest, I will tell you that I have had better results with young females for a reason. I just feel like my personality meshes with them. I've had young high school boys, and they've done all right, and they've gone on to scholarships and so on. But I feel like sometimes my personality doesn't mesh well with young adolescent boys because I think some of them are put off by what I am going to tell them. I think with Briana and certainly with Khalifa, they almost concede, they submit in a way that young boys do not.
All right, now I want to pivot over to Briana for a little bit.
Okay.
We've all seen Briana. We know what kind of talent she is. Great talent. I think she has tremendous appeal, her charisma. I'm looking forward to see what's going to happen in the future.
You and me both.
Certainly, we have a part to play in that.
Yeah.
But what do you think, what would you say is your wish for her in terms of her legacy?
Wow. Her legacy, I think it's already sort of been set out for her, and I think she knows where she fits In other words, because of me, I think Briana is a little bit more aware of the history where she might fit in than the average 18-year-old. So Briana looks and it's like, Briana, here's where you fit. You're going to be handed this baton. That baton is Merlene Ottey, Grace Jackson, Juliet Cuthbert, Peter Gay Dowdy, right? Shelly Ann, all Nicole Mitchell, everybody. And you're going to get it now, we think. It looks like. What are you going to do with it? Because it's not like you're getting the baton behind. It's almost as though you're being asked to anchor the 4x1 and you have a lead. And you have a lead because the last 3 Olympic champions are from your home country.
Absolutely.
And you know them, right?
Yes.
So the reason why Nike signed her is not, that's not a mystery. Nike looked and they went, Shelly Ann, Elaine, who do we think is next? My hope for Briana's legacy is that she takes what these phenomenal women have done from this very small island in the Caribbean that punches so far above its weight in world-class track and field and takes it even higher. And my hope really is that she has some help. And people ask me all the time about Kavona. And I need Ashanti and Kavona and the Clayton twins and whoever else is coming to come, because I feel like it is easier to get it done when you have multiple troops. And I know that because I did it by myself. It was a lot more difficult.
What do you think specifically is Briana's strength? If you could list any one thing.
Briana's strength is that she is not afraid of the moment. You saw that in Usain Bolt. You saw it in Shelly Ann. You saw it in Melaine Walker. You saw it in a bunch of other select Jamaican athletes. And I talked to you a little earlier about Briana not ever having a bad race in a big race. Does she get nervous? Of course she gets nervous. She gets nervous like everybody else. But I'll take you back to 2019 and those national championships in Kingston. I told her in the semifinal, I said, okay, so you're in there with Elaine. Elaine doesn't start the way she was starting in 2016. It means you are going to be ahead of Elaine at 60. She's going to come to get you. You can't do anything about that. When she comes to get you, I want you to stop running because there's nobody, she's not going to bring anybody with her. Later that evening now it's the finals. Mm-hmm. And she's looked, I mean, if you saw the 11:01 in the semifinals and the way in which she ran it, you knew it was coming. And I said to her, okay, so how's your mind? And she said, oh, they got to come bring, and I remember being older than that and thinking, like in the Michael Johnson race, people say, well, were you nervous in that race? I was like, I had nothing to lose in that race. I was a university senior. I was 21 years old. I had nothing to lose. That's Briana's attitude when everybody goes, oh my gosh, you have to run against Shelly Ann and Elaine? And she goes, yeah, but they got to run tonight and they better start well because I'm going to be gone. You can't, that's not something where, she gets that from her coach. You have to have that fearlessness built in. Yeah. The coach can, yes, I can enhance it and I can guide it and I can whatever. But I'm telling you, Briana came to me like that. And I've told people that since the beginning.
So now, you're going to just name an athlete that fits into the category of whatever it is that I'm saying now. Who do you consider to be the best athlete in track and field history?
Best athlete in track and field history? Best sprinter is Bolt. Best athlete is Carl Lewis because of his ability to do the sprints and, of course, 4 long jump goals. Most important sprinter is probably Jesse Owens, though.
But if you could pick anyone that you'd want to compete against, who would it be?
It would probably be somebody from before my era, not because I don't look at Tyson Gay or Johan Blake or Bolt and go, oh yeah, or Asafa Powell and go, oh yeah, I wish I could have raced against them. Different era, those guys were running times that we didn't run. Asafa used to roll out a better run 9.7, right? Usain got down to 9.58 and Blake got down to 9.6. That's not times that we were running, right? Different era. We know more about sprinting now, better shoes, better tracks, whatever. Those guys are just faster. That's why you can't compare eras. Yeah. I would probably say I would have wanted to compete against somebody like a Bob Hayes or a Jim Hines or, well, I mean, I didn't really get Linford in his prime. Linford is the tail end of his career, but it would probably be somebody behind my era who was, because I always felt like I was kind of a throwback anyway.
Oh, interesting. All right, and who would you consider to be, of everyone you've seen, and I know that obviously you're a student of the sport, who's probably the perfect sprinter, if you could pick one?
Asafa.
Asafa.
I always said it. I said if you were constructing a sprinter, out of clay, height, weight, strength, everything, well, almost everything, it would probably look like Asafa. He had all those gifts, but at the same time, Asafa just never had. Look, you don't know this, but I know because I've been in more Olympic finals than you.
Yes.
There is a point in every big competition, in every Olympic final, where it becomes a fight.
Okay.
It's usually in the middle. And, you know, of course, NBC is running all this old Olympic footage. And I know what Bolt's going to do. I know what Richard Thompson's going to do. I know what Blake's going to do. I look at the people who maybe didn't have the best races. Mm-hmm. And of course, Asafa in two of those races was fifth, and I think seventh or eighth. And you look at it, and no matter what he's trying to do, his personality does not fit with being in a fight. And it's why Asafa could run all of those 9.7s on the circuit and break the world records. But you look and you go, wow, his fastest time in Olympics is, I think, 9.9 something. He had everything that you would need to be the best sprinter ever, except I think the personality. He didn't have the personality for it.
Most underrated athlete.
Most underrated athlete, probably Michael Frater. Because when you look at his resume, first of all, none of those, I don't know if any of those world records gets broken for Jamaica without him on there.
They do not.
He also has a world championship silver, which means that in the history of Jamaica, only Johan Blake and Usain Bolt have better medals than him. And that's not something that I think a lot of people realize. Quiet guy, not a guy that talked a lot or had a lot to say. But I look now at his career, and I think he was underrated, maybe if not by everybody else, certainly by a lot of people in Jamaica.
And I know the Women's will be happy to hear you say that. The most overrated athlete?
Overrated for me, probably Ken Terrace, the guy who won the 2000 Sydney gold, because I think that, I raced against him in World Juniors, and he was nothing special, and then he shows up, world champion and Olympic champion, and people go, oh, wow. And then we find out, well, okay, he's now a several times convicted doper. Yeah. You take away that 1 or 2 years, those 1 or 2 years that he was clearly not above board, and his career just kind of fades into the darkness.
All right, so last one, and this doesn't have to be track and field related. I'm throwing this out there generally. The most important sports personality, the person you probably admire most in sports.
Muhammad Ali. I don't know that it's close. When you take Muhammad Ali's protest and what he stood for in the context of what he had to lose, we know that Muhammad Ali is a lot of people's favorite athlete, and I know that's a lot, in large part to what he did in the ring and how charismatic he was and all of that.
It's because of what he did outside of the ring as well. Because he stood.
It is now. But back then, Muhammad Ali was Colin Kaepernick now in America.
Absolutely.
Right? John Carlos and Tommy Smith were Colin Kaepernick. What Colin Kaepernick is now, reviled, un-American, unpatriotic, all of those things. But the test of time has proven very good for both of those.
All right.
Ato, speaking about time, we've been sitting for quite some time, and I think it was a very good conversation.
Absolutely. Good to be with you.
Okay. All the very best for the season if it happens this year.
Yeah, we have a joke at practice now. Tokyo 2023.
It's going to come faster than you think.
Yeah. No, we'll be ready.
Okay, great.